The Angel of Cornasa. Polly Wimmering sat in the back of her parents' car as it slowly ascended the winding road that led up to the hilltop village of Cornasa in Italy, 6 miles from Rome. They were going to stay with Polly's Aunt Mary, who had moved to Italy several years before to retire. The car was hot and stuffy, despite every window being open, and Polly had kept asking for peach-scented wet wipes to cool herself down. All around her now she could see tall cypress trees and rustic houses with red-tiled rooftops. An old man in shorts and a t-shirt came cycling down the hill towards them on a rickety bicycle with a rusty bell. He smiled and waved at them before negotiating his way past the car. Aunt Mary lived in a house in the middle of the village. As they drove in, the tall buildings on either side of them provided shade from the searing heat. The pavements were cobbled, and a small group of children were playing with a football there, with at least 2 of them wearing Roma vests. Polly smiled and waved at them as the car passed by. 1 or 2 waved back. The further on they drove, the more they got a flavour of Cornasa. An old lady carrying a box of fruit. People sitting outside a bar, some of them playing chess. Curled up at their feet was a little dachshund with a bowl of water next to it. They passed a group of old men playing bowls on a sandy patch of ground. In the main square was a fountain and market stalls, selling fruit and vegetables, meats, silk scarves of every colour, and toys, all next to a coffee stand. And almost everywhere, it seemed, there were cats, sunning themselves on the cobbles or in large plant pots. Aunt Mary's house was just down the road from the main square. It was a quaint, old-fashioned house with a cool interior and tiled floors. Aunt Mary was fun and smiling, and told her immediately that she should come and see her room. She took Polly's pink bag and led her down a narrow hallway that led off the dining room. It was a lovely little bedroom that had a window looking out into a small cobbled street and steps that led through an archway. Next to Polly's bed was a table with a lamp, and next to that was a bowl with red grapes in it. At dinner that night they had fish and homemade chips. The table had 3 large candles on it and a carafe of white wine, and for Polly there was Coke galore. In fact, she had so much that her parents were concerned she wouldn't sleep at all that night. Not that she was going to anyway, she was far too excited. When it finally did come to bedtime, Aunt Mary came to tuck her in. The room was dark, with only the bedside lamp illuminating it. Cosy was what it was, thought Polly, as she snuggled in under the blankets, which were more like sheets, as it was too warm for actual blankets. "Tomorrow," said Aunt Mary, "I'll show you around the village, and we'll go for lunch. How does that sound?" Polly nodded excitedly. "Sounds brilliant," she replied, beaming at her aunt. She gazed out through the window now, as Aunt Mary hadn't closed the shutters yet. "Why are the lamps not on?" asked Polly. "Surely they should be lit, because otherwise people won't see where they're going." Aunt Mary now gave her an odd smile, a knowing smile. "What?" asked Polly. "That's a very good question, with a very interesting answer. Do you know why I retired here?" Polly shook her head. "Your mum and I came here once when we were children, and I liked it so much that I came back to live here. But it wasn't just because of its beauty. There is something very special about this village that nobody knows, except the people who live here." Aunt Mary paused. "This village has an angel." The last few words were whispered. Polly's mouth opened as wide as her eyes when she heard them. "An angel," she repeated. Aunt Mary nodded. "How do you know?" "Because I saw her that time we came as children, and it is only children that can see her. No adult eyes have ever gazed upon her. They are too closed, but they know she exists. The lamps aren't lit because it is the angel that lights them. Every night she does this, doing her rounds of the village, illuminating the lamps with a touch of her finger. But that isn't all she does. She makes sure everything and everybody is happy and safe. She likes to sit on the tiled roofs and gaze at the sleeping village. She is the guardian of it. She loves to fly around the old clock tower, and at Christmas the bell has been heard ringing up by itself. Perhaps it is her ringing it. Why is she here?" Aunt Mary smiled. Maybe I'll leave that up to her to tell you. Polly gasped. You mean I too might see her? Oh, I think there is a definite chance that if you sit at the window tonight and watch for her, she will come and say hello. She did with me. Aunt Mary kissed Polly's forehead and tucked her in under the sheets. Night-night, she said. Then she gave her a wink and left. Polly listened to her aunt's footsteps retreating down the hall until they stopped. She listened to the stillness. The window was open, and somewhere she could hear a solitary dog barking. Polly suddenly leapt out of bed, grabbed the bowl of grapes from the table, and ran over to the windowsill. The sill was wide enough for her to jump up into. She crossed her legs, stared out at the street, and ate her grapes. She would wait and watch, if it took her all night. She waited for what seemed like hours, but was only about 45 minutes. But despite her excitement, she was tired, and she soon fell asleep. Polly woke with a start. She was still on the windowsill, with the now empty bowl of grapes in front of her. But it seemed brighter than before. She sighed sadly. Daylight had come, and she had missed her chance of seeing the angel. She raised her head wearily. And then she saw her, lighting the lamp that hung above the archway. That was why there was more light. She was dressed all in white, with her wings folded up neatly behind her. Her hair was long and flowing, and at that moment, as if sensing that the girl had woken, she turned her face towards the window. It was a beautiful face, with pale skin and perfect features, as if they had been carved out of alabaster. She immediately smiled and winked at her, as though she was quite happy being observed. She finished lighting the lamp, and now began to descend the steps leading to the cobbles. Polly's mouth was wide open by this time, just like her eyes. They almost bulged out of their sockets. The angel's step was delicate and precise. She came to within a foot of the window before stopping. "Good morning," she whispered. "Hi," was all Polly managed to say. "You were watching out for me, weren't you?" asked the angel, smiling. Polly just nodded. I wanted to see you," she said. The angel smiled broadly. "What is your name?" she asked. "Polly." "That's a nice name." "It's lovely to meet you, Polly." "It's lovely to meet you too," replied the girl. The angel laughed good-naturedly at the girl's expression of awe. "Well, Polly, would you like to accompany me on my rounds of the village?" Polly's eyes grew even wider than they already were. "Absolutely!" gasped the girl. "I thought so." She held out her hand, and Polly hopped down off the windowsill and took it in her own, all the time staring at the angel's face. She kept staring as they made their way along the cobbles. The angel giggled. "You'll need to watch where you're going, sweetie." Polly dragged her eyes away from the angel's face. "Where are we going first?" asked Polly. "We are heading for the main square. It is one of my favourite places in the village. I like to stand there and watch people in the market. I was there earlier today. I saw you drive past." "But don't people see you?" "I am invisible to them, but a lot of them feel my presence. There is so much harmony in this village. That is why, when things go wrong, I feel it strongly. There are a few errands I need to do this evening, things I need to put right." She stopped to light another lamp. Polly watched her reach up her hand and touch it. "I've been doing this since the village was first built." "Why?" asked Polly. "Because when I light them, they burn brighter than if a human lights them. Also, when anyone passes through the lamplight, they get a feeling of contentment and great peace in their hearts." Polly smiled at this. How nice, she thought. When they came into the main square, it was in darkness. The only light came from doorways and shuttered windows. They could hear the fountain splashing and the noise of cats meowing. They could also hear the sound of a radio that leaked out into the balmy night. It was playing a piece of music. As the angel lit the first lamp, the light fell upon a large tree that rose up and spread its branches out over the fountain. In it sat two cats, who immediately began climbing down to see the angel. They came to her feet and rubbed up against her legs. The angel bent down to stroke them. She made her way over to the fountain now, and sat down on the edge of it. It was an old fountain, original to the village, and had a cherub's head for the water spout. As her wingtips dipped into the water, a beautiful blue light began to fill the fountain, a light that seemed to swim through the water. It then began to come out of the mouth of the cherub. Polly's eyes widened. Then she laughed. "What is it?" she asked. "It is my healing energy. Children like to swim in here a lot on hot days, and adults wash their faces in it. When they do this, I help to heal physical ailments and emotional ones too. That was my original promise." "Your promise to whom?" asked Polly. The angel winked at her. "All in good time," she replied. The angel's first errand was healing a sick dog. It lay on the steps of its master's house, as if guarding the door. When the angel appeared, it wagged its tail happily, but did not manage to get up. The angel bent down and touched the dog's back. It instantly stood up and began wagging its tail even harder. "What did you do?" asked Polly. It had pulled a muscle in its back. Now it is better. Polly stroked the dog, which licked her hand. "You talked about making a promise," said Polly. "Yes. Let's move on, and I'll tell you." They carried on walking. "This village," said the angel, "is very old. It was built in 1924. Before it was here, there was just a hilltop. The vantage point from this hill is wonderful. You can see right out over to Rome in the distance. One day, as I sat there, I witnessed a man approach. I could sense straight away that he was not a happy man. His physical and emotional energy were draining from his body. He could not see me, of course, but I watched as he sat down near to me and put his head in his hands. There were many thoughts going through his mind. I could hear them, all jumbled up. As they walked, they passed an old woman sitting on a chair outside her front door. She was fast asleep. The angel touched the woman on her head. "Why did you just touch her?" asked Polly. "To make sure she has sweet dreams," replied the angel. She lit another lamp. As I was saying, I could hear this man's thoughts, and they were distressed thoughts. So I did something then that I don't usually do. I appeared to him, but not quite as full form as you are seeing me now. I appeared to him as a bright light. As with most grown-ups, he was at first very startled. "Do not be afraid of me," I told him. "I am an angel. You need some company and somebody to talk to. I am here to listen." The man stared at me. "Are you really an angel, or just an image I have created?" I touched his arm then to prove that I was real. "It is amazing," he exclaimed. "Why are you so sad?" I asked him. He sighed. "Tell me," I said. "My name is Roberto. Recently my dear wife Cornasa passed away. She was the most wonderful woman I have ever known. This was our spot. This is where we used to come and look out at the great city of Rome. It was where we lived. The first time I met her, I brought her up here. She was entranced by the view. We spent many happy hours up here, talking about things. I'm an architect, and she was a nurse. She helped the wounded during the war. She was such a caring woman, always looking out for people, making sure they were okay. Now she is gone, and I don't know now what to do with my life. Sometimes I still feel her, as if she's in the air around me. But that is silly. Not at all. It is the truth. She is still with you. Her soul lingers on the breeze. She whispers in your ear." He looked at me then and smiled sadly. "I have an idea," I said. "Tell me," he replied. "Why not design and build something in her memory? You're an architect. Use your skills." Roberto's eyes widened. "What an amazing idea! Where should I build this shrine? Tell me, Angel." "Why? Right where we're sitting. This is where you were most happy." Roberto stood up. "You are right. I will build it here." After thinking for a while, he said, "She often said how much she would like me to build her a house here. So that is what I will do. Build her a beautiful house. Or even better, I will build an entire village to her memory. The village of Cornasa. It will be stunning." He turned to me. "But Angel, please, will you do me a favor? Please bless this village and look after it. Be its protector. It is what Cornasa would want. An angelic being watching over the inhabitants. Will you do this for me?" "Of course I will." Roberta smiled and thanked me. "It is funny," he said, "but there's something very familiar about you. I feel a strong connection. Why is that?" "Perhaps we have met before." "But I have never seen an angel before," he said. "Angels can come in many forms," I replied. Polly watched as the angel repaired a broken window pane. As she touched it with her hand, the glass seemed to melt and remold itself. "You see? It is just like the glass. When it is broken, it can reform." Polly was gobsmacked. "So it was Roberta who designed and built this village?" she asked. "Yes," replied the angel. "The project took 3 years from start to finish, and when it was done, Roberta was no longer sad, but pleased with what he had done. He knew Cornasa would be proud of him, and he was at peace. He lived in the village until he died many years later, but he died a happy and contented man. And I have always kept my promise to him, that I would look after this place." She looked down at Polly. "But there is one more thing that I want to show you. You're not afraid of heights, are you?" Polly shook her head. "Good," said the angel, "because we are going up high." Suddenly Polly realized that her feet were no longer touching the ground, and neither were the angels. In fact, they were now rising into the air together, high above the rooftops of the buildings. Polly was too amazed to say anything. It was a clear night. No clouds covered the sky. "Look down," said the angel, "and tell me what you see." Polly did as she was told. She saw the lights of the village laid out beneath them, and it took her only a moment to see what the angel had clearly intended her to see. The lamps they had lit along the streets seemed to form a distinctive shape. "It looks like a pair of wings," said Polly. The angel smiled. "Indeed," she said. Not only did Roberto build his village as a shrine to his wife, but as a shrine to the angel he had met on the hill, the angel who had given him the idea in the first place, and he left it up to me to illuminate the pattern. They descended again, this time landing back outside the open window of Polly's aunt's house. "It is time for us to part now," said the angel. Polly looked sad. "I will still be around," she said. "Perhaps we will see each other tomorrow night." Polly turned. Then she hesitated, as though a thought hit her. She turned back to the angel. "You never told me your name." The angel cocked her head. "Haven't you worked it out?" she said. "Why I really linger in this village? Why Roberta thought he knew me?" Polly frowned. "It is simple. I am Cornasa."